All right. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, everybody. Welcome to the NASA Commercial Satellite Data Acquisition Program, sponsored National Civil Application Center, connecting space-based resources to civil science research and disaster applications webinar. This is your host, Jennifer Brennan. It is 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so we're going to go ahead and get started here. What I'll do first is begin today's webinar with a few logistics. To ensure the best audio experience, all participants have been placed in silent mode. But if you have any issues or you have any questions, please enter them into the Q&A panel rather than the chat located on the right side of your screen. If you do not see the Q&A panel, what you can do is click on the 3 dots at the bottom of your screen to pull up your panel options and then insert a check mark next to the Q&A panel. A quick word about the chat. Participants will have the capability to chat with the hosts and presenters, but not with other participants. So if you have questions, again, we'd like for you to please enter them into the Q&A panel on the right side of your screen so that everyone can benefit from that content. Today's webinar is being recorded. The recording will be made available online within a week of completion. And once that is done, what I will do on my end is send an email to all registrants and participants that includes links to both the recording and presentation slide decks used within today's webinar. As far as timing is concerned, today's event will be 1 hour and 15 minutes long with approximately 50 minutes allocated to the presentations. A 15-minute Q&A period will follow, and depending on the volume of questions we receive, we may extend the Q&A session, but we will have a hard cutoff of 3:15 p.m. Eastern Time. During this afternoon's webinar event, we have one speaker from NASA's CSDA program and one speaker from the USGS National Civil Application Center. Our first speaker this afternoon is Dana Ostrenga. Dana is the CSDA project manager at NASA Goddard Space Flight Center. She will begin this afternoon's webinar with an introduction to NASA's CSDA program and its goals and objectives. Once finished, we will transition to our primary speaker for this afternoon, Ross Rogers. Ross is a source team lead and senior departmental requirements officer for NCAC. With that, Ross will kick us off today with an overview of how the National Civil Application Center, NCAC, and Civil Applications Committee enable federal civil agencies to access, coordinate, and apply commercial and national satellite remote sensing capabilities in support of science, public safety, and public service missions. From there, he will establish organizational context for how long-standing Earth observation missions connect to modern commercial remote sensing systems. After this, Ross will introduce NCAC's 3 core functions and then transition to a focus on NCAC's source and its coordination with NASA's CSDA program when applicable. A practical overview of the data acquisition request process follows, and an overview of the types of satellite capabilities available to civil users will be presented. Finally, his presentation will conclude with real-world examples demonstrating how coordinated access to satellite imagery supports flood assessment, wildfire monitoring, forest health analysis, and other mission-critical applications. Once finished, Ross will toss it back over to me, and I will open up the final set of optional polls. And then from there, we're going to transition directly to the question and answer session. Before I toss it over to Dana, just a couple of words about this afternoon's Q&A session. We will try to answer all questions within the time allotted, but if we are not able to address your question during the Q&A period, our speakers will be able to follow up with you offline. So with that, it is my pleasure to introduce today's first speaker, Dana Ostrenga. All right, Dana, and Joe, if you could keep an eye on the chat while I am sharing my screen and so forth, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer, for kicking us off. So my name is Dana Ostrenga. As Jennifer mentioned, I am the NASA Commercial Satellite Data Acquisition Program Project Manager located out at Goddard Space Flight Center. And we have Melissa Martin, who is also our Program Manager at headquarters, who is not with us today. Go ahead, next slide. So NASA has a strong history with Earth observation data. They acquire, enhance, utilize, and steward that data. And NASA really wanted to explore the possibilities of acquiring and integrating commercial data with our agency partners to support research and application initiatives. With the increasing numbers in commercial Earth observing constellations, they leverage newer technology, they provide higher spatial resolution, shorter revisit rates, and they also have tasking capabilities. It really makes it ideal to incorporate their data into our ecosystem and augment existing government satellite data. Next slide. So that brings me a little bit to the Commercial Satellite Data Acquisition Program. Here are our core missions and goals of our program. If you missed any of our previous webinars, just to give you a little background, CSDA serves as a central mechanism for NASA for identifying, evaluating, and acquiring commercial satellite data that supports NASA's Earth science research and application goals. The program has 5 main goals. One is to establish a continuous and repeatable process to on-ramp new commercial data vendors, to enable sustained use of that data for broader dissemination to our scientific community, to ensure the long-term data preservation, access, and distribution of that data, ensuring scientific reproducibility, and to collaborate and partner with interagency international partners on the evaluation and scientific use of that data, and then last, to comply with the 2003 U.S. Commercial Remote Sensing Policy. If you've missed any of our previous webinars, we do have some that discuss all the different vendors that are on our contracts. You can go to the CSDA YouTube channel to see our kickoff webinar for this series that talks a little bit more about our program and our partners. Next slide. So this slide just kind of showcases our diverse array of commercial vendors, and each providing unique satellite data products to help NASA advance Earth science. We currently have 15 commercial vendors on contract that we can acquire data from. For multispectral imagery, we partner with Maxar, Black Sky, and Sciologic. For Planet operates in both the multispectral and hyperspectral domains, alongside Teledyne Brown Engineering and Pixel, who specialize in hyperspectral data. Another one of our vendors, Airbus, operates in both multispectral and the area of synthetic aperture radar, alongside other SAR providers, which include MDA, Umbra, ISA, and Capella Space. They all enable all-weather day and night imaging. For monitoring and methane emissions, we go to our provider of GHDSat. For GNSS radio occultation capabilities, they come from Planet IQ and Spire. They contribute valuable atmospheric profiles, and digital elevation models are sourced from Maxar and Airbus. And for precipitation data, we utilize data from Tomorrow.io. So together with these vendors, they enable NASA to access high-value commercial satellite data across a broad range of Earth science applications, and they enhance our ability to monitor and understand our planet. We do currently have an on-ramp that's going on right now, and so we're hoping to bring some new vendors on in the near future to supplement our partnerships with all of these commercial companies. Next slide. Great. So talking about partnerships, we not only partnership with the commercial community, but we also have partnerships with our federal agencies and international agencies. We do that through different coordination like JC. We also continue to have a very close partnership with ESA. And then we have a coordination with our different federal partners for commercial data purchases, and also some collaboration on reporting. So that kind of ties us into where the webinar is bringing us to today and one of our agency partners. And they'll talk a little bit more on that collaboration and then also how they support this usage of commercial data. Next slide. So with that said, that leads us to our invited speaker who will talk to you about the National Civil Application Center. So we'll stop presenting, and Ross, you can take it from here.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the warm welcome. It is an honor to be here on today on behalf of the U.S. Geological Survey and the National Civil Application Center, or NCAC. My name is Ross Rogers. I serve as the Senior Departmental Requirements Officer for NCAC. My role is all about connecting capabilities to missions, coordinating high-resolution satellite imagery collections in support of the federal civil community. Today, I'll share how NCAC and the Civil Applications Committee, or CAC, integrate national and commercial remote sensing technologies to support civil science and public service missions. And an important point for this audience, our resources complement NASA's commercial small sat data acquisition program. Our offices work closely together to provide federal civil agencies with streamlined access to satellite data, avoiding duplication, reducing cost, and maximizing the use of remote sensing for science, natural hazards, and disaster response. Before we dive in, let's align on a few terms in the context of this presentation. Remote sensing refers to satellite-derived data. Collections means tasking satellites to acquire high-resolution imagery. I'll break out acronyms as we go, but you'll hear NCAC and CAC throughout the briefing. And for those who may be less familiar with NCAC or the Civil Applications Committee, don't worry. Historically, we've been somewhat of a black box. That's largely due to origins coming out of the intelligence and military sector. NCAC was not publicly recognized until the early 90s, following the declassification of the National Reconnaissance Office. And the Civil Applications Committee activities have been primarily conducted at the classified level until more recently. Over the last few decades, however, the rapid growth of commercial space capabilities has significantly expanded unclassified access. Today, with the majority of satellite requirements we support involve commercial systems, enabling a much broader engagement across the civil and scientific community. With that context in mind, I'll start by highlighting the impact of the National Civil Applications Center, the Civil Applications Committee, and later in the briefing, I'll walk through how NCAC and CAC operate in more detail. But first, let's begin with the results. So let's get started. In the fiscal year 2025, the National Civil Applications Center played a critical role in enabling civil missions worldwide. Over the past year, my office coordinated more than 1,200 satellite imagery requirements, resulting in the delivery of over 92,000 high-resolution satellite images in support of a broad range of federal civil missions, including scientific research, natural hazards, and disaster response. Here's the key point for this audience. Through the Civil Applications Committee's authorities, this imagery was provided at no direct cost to the requesting agency. NCAC accomplishes this by leveraging existing government contracts established by the National Reconnaissance Office and the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, which is a strong example of interagency collaboration that mirrors the principle behind NASA's CSDA program. By coordinating imagery acquisition at the enterprise level rather than agencies procuring data independently, the federal civil agencies avoided over $355 million in duplicative commercial cost. This is what the NCAC and CAC are fundamentally about, connecting national and commercial remote sensing capabilities to civil and scientific users in a way that is collaborative, efficient, and mission-focused, a highly complementary to NASA's CSDA's work. I'll move quickly through the next few slides just to provide organizational context. Starting from the top of my organization, we fall under the U.S. Department of Interior, which manages the nation's natural resources, cultural heritage, provides authoritative science to inform decision-making, and fulfills trust responsibilities to tribal and indigenous communities. Within the Department of Interior, the primary science bureau responsible for delivering that mission is the U.S. Geological Survey. Within the Department of Interior, the U.S. Geological Survey delivers actual science to decision makers on energy and mineral resources, natural hazards, and water resources using state-of-the-art science tools and technology. USGS also provides authoritative mapping and characterization of the nation's land and water features and continues to inform key natural resource and risk assessments, such as the update of the list of critical minerals, which supports the understanding of minerals supply risk essential to the economic and national security. Within USGS, these science missions are enabled by mission areas that provide the data, infrastructure, and integration needed to operate at scale. One of which is core science systems. Core science systems is the USGS mission area that provides the foundational data, infrastructure, and integration needed to support science across the Bureau. Core Science Systems delivers enterprise geospatial framework, data standards, and shared platforms that enable consistent access to authoritative data and ensure interoperability across programs and partners. This mission area plays a critical role in advancing remote sensing and land imaging capabilities, connecting satellite data, analytic tools, and users to support science, decision-making, and operational missions. Within Core Science Systems sits a land imaging program, which I'll cover next, and which directly supports how satellite data are acquired, managed, and delivered for civil applications. So I'll walk through the 4 key IMS shown here, moving left to right. The first is Earth Resource Observation Center, located out in South Dakota. It serves as the operational hub for land imaging, processing, archiving, and distributing millions of satellite images in support of science, policy, and disaster response worldwide. Second, Landsat is the longest running satellite imagery program in the world, continuously observing the Earth since 1972. In 2023, Landsat's economic value was assessed at over $25 billion, underscoring its national importance. Third, Earth Explorer is USGS's public data portal, providing no-cost access to a vast archive of remote sensing data, including Landsat, commercial imagery, and aerial photography for scientists, decision makers, educators, and the public. Finally, the Land Imaging Program serves as the national home for the National Civil Applications Center. And that's where I'll spend the remainder of this presentation, because NCAC is the point where national and commercial satellite capabilities are translated into direct mission impact for the federal civil community. The National Civil Applications Center plays a critical role in the public safety and national security by connecting advanced remote sensing capabilities to the nation's civil science and public service missions. This is where the satellite capabilities you just saw, the land imaging program, are translated into direct mission impact for the federal civil community. NCAC's role can be summarized in 3 ways. First, NCAC provides federal civil agencies access to national and commercial satellite systems through interagency partnerships, enabling agencies to task and acquire high-resolution imagery with scientific research, natural hazard monitoring, and disaster response. Second, NCAC applies geospatial and remote sensing expertise to transform imagery into actionable insight, supporting disaster response, natural resource management, and earth science missions across the federal civil community. Third, NCAC fosters the Civil Applications Committee, an interagency forum that brings together federal civil agencies with the military and the intelligence community to share requirements, resources, and expertise, aligning satellite data use across government to maximize impact and efficiency. I'll reference these 3 functions throughout the rest of the briefing as we move from structure to process and then mission examples. Building on NCAC's role in providing and coordinating satellite access, one area where the capability has very real immediate impact is volcano monitoring. In addition to coordinating satellite collections, NCAC has dedicated volcano analysts who track and assess volcanic activity worldwide. This work directly enhances our nation's ability to protect lives, reduce the impacts of volcanic hazards, and ensure safety both on the ground and in the air. We support partners such as USGS Volcano Science Centers, the Volcano Disaster Assistance Program, and NOAA's Volcanic Ash Advisory Centers are delivering timely, high-resolution satellite imagery and expert analysis and informing monitoring, alerts, and response. Where volcano monitoring highlights NCAC's global hazard role, another mission area where our capabilities are used daily often under extreme time pressure as wildfire support. Wildfire support is a critical NCAC mission delivered through specialized fire mapping and situational awareness programs. The first is FireGuard, which enables the National Guard to leverage civil applications authorities to provide 24/7 fire detection and situational awareness. These this data supports real-time response coordination. A powerful example was the 2020 Creek Fire, where FireGuard intelligence was enabled Chinook helicopter pilots to safely evacuate 242 people from the Mammoth Pole grounds. The second is Aircraft 3, a mission led by NCAC analysts that delivers high-resolution wildfire perimeter mapping directly to incident commanders at the National Interagency Fire Center. These products are used daily for operational planning and resource development. In fiscal year 25, NCAC mapped 13.5% of all wildfires nationwide, demonstrating how these capabilities scale to support emergency response across the country. Together, FireGuard and Aircraft 3 illustrate NCAC's unique role in bringing space-based data and analytic expertise directly to wildfire operations, saving lives and protecting communities. Wildfires are just one example. These same coordination and analysis capabilities are applied across a much broader set of disaster response and recovery missions. Supporting disaster response, hazard monitoring, and recovery efforts is a core part of NCAC's mission across the federal, state, and local civil communities. NCAC facilitates satellite imagery collection both before and after disasters, ensuring federal, state, local, and tribal partners have timely access to the data needed to prepare, respond, and recover effectively. Through NCAC source operations, we work hand in hand with federal, state, and local civil agencies and governments to clearly define and prioritize collection requirements, deconflict efforts across organizations to avoid duplication, but most importantly, ensure imagery and data products are delivered rapidly to decision makers when and where they are needed. So how is this all possible? As I mentioned earlier, the National Civil Applications Center facilitates the Civil Applications Committee, or CAC. The committee itself was formally established in 1975 when President Ford directed the Secretary of Interior to create a mechanism to oversee and facilitate federal access to military and intelligence overhead remote sensing systems. Though today, operations of the CAC was entrusted to the U.S. Geological Survey, a role it continues to perform today through NCAC. The vision underpinning CAC traces back even earlier to Dr. Hornweg, who was the science advisor to President Johnson. He recognized the value of responsibility, applying national technical capabilities to civil science, mapping, and public safety needs. For more than 50 years, the Civil Applications Committee has enabled collaboration among the civil community, the military, and the intelligence community, advancing science, research, intelligence support, and disaster response. Today, that tradition continues as NCAC represents the CAC members' organizations across military and intelligence firms, helping align civil requirements, emerging capabilities, research needs, and applications of both current and future remote sensing systems. The Civil Applications Committee's charter is signed by the Secretary of Interior and the Director of National Intelligence, chaired by the USGS Director. A key responsibility of the committee is to support the statutory missions of its members' agencies and help them apply remote sensing data and technologies for civic purposes where appropriate. The support shall be in accordance with applicable laws, regulations protecting personal rights, personal privacy, and civil liberties. The Civil Applications Committee accomplishes this mission by operating in what we like to call the triple junction, the convergence of federal civil community, the military, and the intelligence community. The committee hosts monthly meetings at both the classified and unclassified level to discuss remote sensing technology and applications in both private and federal enterprises. Here you can see the membership of the Civil Applications Committee. Principal members are federal civil agencies operating under Title V authorities, representing the core civil user community. Associate members are military and intelligence community organizations that provide capabilities, expertise, and access to national systems. The ex officio members provide guidance and oversight, ensuring appropriate use, policy alignment, and accountability across the committee. Now that you've had a clear picture of the NCAC and CAC's mission and role, I want to focus on how those capabilities are actually leveraged in practice. This is where NCAC Source comes in. The mission of the NCAC Source Department is to receive near-term or time-sensitive federal civil remote sensing requirements and submit those requirements for tasking and collection across national and commercial systems. The phrase "sunk cost well spent" reflects our ability to maximize existing remote sensing contracts established by the Civil Applications Committee's associate members, providing federal civil agencies access to satellite imagery without duplicating commercial purchases. From a user perspective, this means agencies can focus on defining their mission need, while NCAC Source handles coordination, reconfliction, and execution behind the scenes. Federal civil agencies can also sponsor state and local partners under these authorities to synchronize requirements and expand mission impact. The coordination flows directly through NCAC Source. And with that context, the next slide I'll show shows how a requirement moves through the decision process once it reaches NCAC Source. Building on NCAC Source supports near-term tasking. This slide shows how a satellite requirement moves through the decision process once submitted. Everything begins with the collection requirement from a civil user. The first decision made is system-based, whether the requirement is for national systems or commercial systems. If the requirement aligns with commercial systems, next evaluates whether it can be supported through the existing NRO or NGA's mature contracts. When the answer is yes, the requirement flows through USGS tasking platforms and is coordinated and executed by NCAC Source under the Civil Applications Committee's authorities. If the requirement cannot be met through those contracts, it is evaluated against NASA's CSDA program, and when appropriate, routed into the CSDA tasking process. And if a requirement cannot be satisfied by either pathway, it does not stop there. But it's further coordinated through the Civil Applications Requirements Working Group, where longer-standing needs are tracked and used to inform future capabilities and contract considerations. The key takeaway is that no requirement is asked. Each one is either addressed through an existing pathway or captured to help shape future remote sensing capabilities for the federal civil community. With that decision logic in mind, the next slide covers what users need before submitting a request, starting with a AROS registration. This starts with an active AROS registration account. AROS registration is a credential that enables enables access to USGS remote sensing tools and data systems used throughout the process. If you don't already have an account, registration is straightforward and can be completed through the U.S. Geological Survey's AROS website. Once registered, users can gain access to platforms like Earth Explorer, CIDR, CMT, HDDS, and other USGS-hosted resources used to request and retrieve satellite imagery. Yes, I'll break out those acronyms in the far sides. Key takeaway here is simple. This registration is the front door to submitting and receiving imagery through NCAC-supported workflows. With that in place, the next slide walks through how requirements are submitted, which tools are used based on the mission need. With registration in place, the slide shows how users submit a collection requirement and which path to use. The process begins by identifying the intent of the requirement. There are two primary tasking platforms, both accessed through your Arrows account. CIDR is for science and research requirements, and CMT is used for emergency operations. The distinction comes down to purpose. CIDR is used when the objective is research, analysis, and long-term monitoring. CMT is used when the objective is operational response and coordination during an incident. When supporting disaster response, routing depends on the organizations involved. If you're supporting an agency other than FEMA, requirements are submitted through the collection management tool. If you're with FEMA, requirements submitted through DHS, Departmental Requirements Officer. It's important to note that NCAC source can support tasking even when the event is not a FEMA-declared disaster. Whether an incident is large or localized, imagery can still be provided to support situational awareness, response, and recovery. CMT also links collection requirements to a specific event, which helps prevent duplication and keeps agencies' efforts aligned. If you're unsure which path to use, my office is available to help determine the right approach. The next slide outlines the basic information needed to submit a request successfully, regardless of which tool you use. Once you've identified the appropriate submission path, this slide outlines the basic information or requesting user basic information a user should consider when preparing a collection request. These elements apply regardless of whether the request is submitted through CIDR or CMT. First is a clear description of the mission need. This provides context and helps ensure the request is understood from the start. Second, the area of interest. Users should keep the area of interest tightly focused on the actual mission need. The size of the area directly affects collection opportunities. Larger areas reduce the number of available sensor passes and can introduce delays. Third is timing, including when the imagery was needed and how long the collection window can remain open. Realistic timeframes improve feasibility and flexibility. Fourth are the minimum technical parameters required to satisfy the mission, such as resolution or revisit frequency. Defining minimum needs rather than ideal conditions often leads to better outcomes. Finally, identifying the intended use helps ensure the request is reviewed and routed appropriately. Providing this information up front helps streamline review, reduce follow-on questions, and increases the likelihood of successful collection. With these basics in place, the next slide walks through how this information is entered when submitting a request through CIDR. Once you've logged into your Arrows user account and enter CIDR, this is the landing page. At the top of the screen, you'll see two options on the burner: search and request data. By default, CIDR opens in the search view, which displays a list of publicly viewable data acquisition requests, or DARs, along the left side of the screen. Selecting a DAR highlights the area of interest of the map within the view. So let me move the polling. If you want to know more about the DAR, you can select the information button next to the check mark, and it will take you to the DAR. Here you can see the details you submitted request along the current status. This view also allows you to share DAR information by selecting Email DAR Information button in the upper left options. You can send these details directly to others. Next, we'll go back and walk through the request data section. to show how the data is created. The request data section is where a user submits a data acquisition request. This can be used either to request archive imagery or to initiate a new satellite collection. Before starting a request, it's helpful for users to have the basic requirement elements prepared in advance. Many users find it easiest to draft the responses ahead of time and then copy and paste them into the form. This helps ensure the request is clear, complete, and ready for review once submitted. When you select the Request Data tab, you're presented with an online form used to submit a data acquisition request. This form captures the basic requirement elements we discussed earlier. If at any point you need help understanding what a field is asking for, there is help documentation available on the upper right banner. Selecting that link opens a reference guide that explains each section of the form. We'll now walk through this form step by step and discuss options and inputs available in each section. And just as a note, USGS is currently working through updates on CIDR and CMT interfaces to streamline this process and remove legacy options that no longer are applicable. Hopefully, as commercial remote sensing capabilities have expanded over the past decade. The first section is complete. The first section to complete is a project description and justification. This field is more than a project title or a single sentence. It should clearly describe what the project is, how the requested imagery will be used, and what information you expect to derive from the data. For science and research-based efforts, providing a well-written paragraph that outlines the project goals, timelines, and intended use of the imagery is especially important. The more context you provide up front, the less likely my office will need to follow up for clarification, which helps avoid delays in processing the request. When submitting through CMT for a disaster-related event, ensure the explanation is typically sufficient. Even in most cases, additional context is always helpful. And if you are a state, local, or tribal organization, be sure to include your federal sponsor's agency, along with a point of contact name and email so we can coordinate appropriately. The next field is data use and sharing. In this section, we really describe who will have access to this imagery, will be used, and whether it will be shared beyond the immediate team or organization. The data will support a publication, interagency collaboration, or public-facing product. Be sure to note that here. If the data, providing transparency in this field helps ensure the data is handled appropriately and reviewed in accordance with applicable use restrictions. This information aligns with the commercial data and imagery end user license agreement established by NRO and NGA. My office can provide those agreements for references if needed. The has seen list field refers to the archive imagery dated section. If you're requesting archived imagery, this is where you should provide the specific scene IDs you want delivered. It's important to note that many users can download archived commercial imagery directly from platforms such as GGD Pro without submitting a CIDR request. As a result, my office is seeing fewer archive imagery requests in CIDR, since users are often able to retrieve what they need directly through that portal. When a CIDR archive request is needed, the requester is responsible for identifying those scene IDs. NCAC source does not search commercial archives on the behalf of the user. Providing a complete and accurate scene list upfront helps avoid delays and ensures the request can be processed efficiently. You may need multiple scene IDs within a single. You may include multiple scene IDs within a single DAR as long as they are within the same country and support the same requirement. If your request scene spans multiple countries, a separate DAR is required for each country. The processing level field only applies to imagery distributed through Earth Explorer and specifically to Vantor, which is formerly Maxar data. If you are accessing imagery through GG Pro, the processing level set selection does not affect the data delivery and can be disregarded. This build remains in the farm due to legacy workflows that for most users working through GG Pro, no action is required here. The output format field only applies to Vantor imagery that is disseminated through Earth Explorer. For those requests, we generally recommend selecting NTF format. GeoTIFF is an available option. We have occasionally seen processing or dissemination issues when GeoTIFFs are selected, which can introduce delays. If imagery is being accessed through GG Pro, this field does not apply and the selection has no impact. As a reminder, this setting is only relevant for Vantor data distributed through Earth Explorer. The type of imagery section can be a little confusing up first, so here's the key way to think about it. These options are tiered, not additive. If you select PAN, you will receive panchromatic imagery only. If you select MSI or multispectral imagery, you will receive PAN and MSI. If you select SWIR, you will receive PAN, MSI, and SWIR. Because of that hierarchy, users should select the highest level of imagery needed to satisfy the requirement. There's no need to check multiple boxes if a higher tiered option already includes the lower ones. Selecting the appropriate tier helps ensure the request is clear and avoids unnecessary clarification during review. The acquisition start field is straightforward, but it's important to set a realistic start date. For new collections, users should avoid selecting the current data, current day as a start date. Submitting requests at least 24 to 48 hours in advance allows time for review, adjudication, and tasking. There's no standard timeline from request to collection. Actual collection timing depends on several factors, including satellite orbit geometry, sensor availability, weather, and mission priorities. For archive imagery request, some users enter dates that correspond to when the imagery was originally collected. While that's acceptable, it doesn't impact delivery. The primary purpose of this field is to establish a realistic start date for new collections. The archive imagery needed field is often redundant if a user has already provided a scene list. If you've included a specific scene ID, that indicates you're requesting archived imagery. In those cases, users should paste the scene list directly into the request details field, and tools like Maxar or Vantor's archive data, Vantor's archive search and discovery tools can be used to identify scene IDs. That said, most users looking for archive imagery should first be browsing through GGD Pro. In practice, GGD Pro is the most efficient way to determine whether existing imagery already meets your needs, often eliminating the need to submit an archive request inside or at all. For that reason, I strongly encourage users to create a GG Pro account and explore available imagery there before submitting an archive request. The imagery resolution field is another area where advances in commercial space-based remote sensing has simplified the decision for users. For most high-resolution commercial imagery, meter resolution is now the standard. As a result, users can generally select 1 meter for this field without overthinking it. This selection aligns with how the majority of modern commercial systems operate and helps keep the request straightforward during the review. The acquisition end field applies to new collections. Collection requirements all run for 1 year at a time, or can run for 1 year at a time. So the end date should not extend beyond 1 year for the acquisition start date. If coverage is needed beyond that time frame, users should plan to resubmit a new data acquisition request annually. Referencing the previous SADA request number is helpful for continuity and review. Publicly viewable flood controls, whether other users can see the area of interest for your request within CIDR, as shown earlier on the landing page. If you want your request correction remain private and not visible to other CIDR users, set no in this field. The setting does not affect data access, tasking, or delivery. It only determines the visibility of the request footprint within CIDR. The collection strategy field can be one of the more complex sections, so I break it down how to think about it. Archive means you're requesting previously collected imagery. With that, just provide some scene LDs into the request details and no additional strategy selection as needed. When good collect is typically the best option for most users. This means the goal is to obtain one mostly cloud-free image during the requested time window. In practice, we often attempt more than one collection to archive that outcome. Users should monitor results and let us know if the imagery is not meeting their needs. The remaining options represent collection attempts, not guaranteed collections. For example, 1 in 1 for 7 days is one attempt per day for 7 days, allowing up to 90% cloud coverage. 1 in 3 for 21 days is one attempt every 3 days with up to 50% cloud cover. 1 in 7 is one attempt per week for 6 weeks with up to 25% cloud coverage, and 1 in 15 for 90 is one attempt every 15 days for 3 months with up to 25% cloud coverage. These options are guidelines, not strict rules. Actual collection depends on several factors, including the size of the area of interest, sensor availability, and cloud cover tolerances. As a general rule, data collection strategies should not extend beyond 7 days without being revalidated or resubmitted. My office recommends recruiting this field as a starting point. Users should clearly describe their actual needs in the project description or request details section. Since not all strategies are feasible and may require follow-up discussion. The request details field is a catch-all section. This is where you should include any additional information that helps clarify what you're requesting and why, especially if it doesn't fit cleanly into the other fields. This is also the right place to note some assumptions, constraints, priorities, or trade-offs we're willing to make, such as flexibility and timing, coverages, or cloud tolerances. If you're unsure whether your area of interest is too large to support the collection frequency you're requesting, the Commercial Systems Reference Guide my office provides can help set realistic expectations based on the size of the area and the sensor capabilities. Providing that context up front helps reduce follow-up questions and keeps the request moving efficiently. This section focuses on geometry to use and why, rather than the mechanics of drawn shapes. Geometry section directly affects collection feasibility, frequency, and timeline, so choose the right approach is important. Use point geometry when your area of interest is very small, such as a single facility, structure, or precise location. Point geometry works well for high-frequency collections. The coverage is intentionally limited. Broader context or surrounding coverage is needed. A bounding box or polygon may be appropriate. Sensor-specific point size limits are outlined in that Commercial Systems Reference Guide. Use bounding box geometry when you need to submit a simple rectangular coverage over an area. This is often one of the most efficient options for general coverage and works well when boundaries are straightforward. Keep the box as tight as possible around the actual area of interest. Larger boxes reduce collection opportunities and may limit frequency. Use multi-point polygon geometry for irregular or complex areas such as coastlines, wildfire perimeters, or administrative boundaries. Polygons provide highest precision, but larger, more complex shapes reduces collection feasibility. Circle geometry is useful when the area of interest is centered on a single location, but you need more coverage than a point allows. Like point geometry, circles are constrained by sensor-specific limits. So circles to define effective for general coverage, but larger radii reduce the collection frequency and increase timelines. Predefined area geometry is generally not preferred method for collections today. The sensor resolution has gone too advanced and often lacks precision required to support an effective collection strategy. KML upload is a strong option when you already have an area of interest defined. It allows users to upload pre-created geometries, which can save time and reduce efforts. CIDR does not support submitting areas of interest using shapefiles. That said, CIDR does support supporting shapefiles. However, KMLs are definitely preferred. For that, for the AOLs, it's just easier for all systems and uploads. Before submitting a request, take a moment to confirm that the key selections are complete, particularly project description, soon list if applicable, and request details. This is also a good time to sanity check your geometry. As a reminder, use the simplest geometry that meets your mission needs. Keep areas of interest as small and focused as possible. Avoid adding extra coverage. Have larger areas, reduce collection opportunities, and ensure the geometry aligns with the collection strategy and frequency you're requesting. Clear, well-defined submissions help avoid delays. Once submitted, my office will review the request and follow up if any clarification is needed before tasking proceeds. Once you submit a request in CIDR, you'll be taken to a data acquisition request or DAR status page and will receive a confirmation email from CIDR acknowledging the submission. As the request moves through coordination and tasking, we'll receive additional email notifications when the status changes, if my office needs clarification on any part of the request. From there, the next question most users ask is, where does this data actually show up? The answer depends on the type of request and the collection system used. The next few slides, I'll walk through the primary delivery portals you may encounter and how users access them. From CIDR request, imagery may be delivered through several different portals. One of the primary portals is Earth Explorer, which is a USGS managed platform linked to your AROS registration account. Earth Explorer provides access to a wide range of satellite imagery and geospatial datasets. It's commonly used for science, research, and analysis workflows. For any request submitted through CMT, imagery is delivered through the Hazards Data Distribution Center, or HDDS. HDDS is connected to your AROS registration account, is primarily used for disaster response and hazard-related collections. Another delivery portal to highlight is GG Pro, or Global Enhanced Geont Delivery, which is a high-performance satellite imagery platform operated by Vantor in partnership with the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. The platform provides U.S. government users and approved mission partners with access to high-resolution unclassified commercial satellite imagery, supporting use cases such as operational planning, situational awareness, emergency response, and disaster missions. GGD Pro is designed to support both rapid access and scalable exploitation, making it particularly useful for users who need consistent access to commercial imagery across ongoing missions. To use GGD Pro, users must register and access must be validated by NGA. Here shows how to access, request access for this platform. You'll need to submit an email with the following information. Include for the main agency office and your official government email address. Also, include a brief intended use case describing how you plan to use the data. And finally, you'll also need to provide the federal sponsor, verifying agency office, and official email address. This information allows NGA to validate access and ensure the platform is being used appropriately for approved government missions. If you encounter any issues requesting access or have questions along the way, please contact my office. We're happy to assist. Finally, if your requirement is collected using the Planet Dove constellation, the imagery will be delivered exclusively through Planet Explorer. Planet Explorer provides access to Planet's high-cadence commercial imagery that supports time series analysis, monitoring, and change detection workflows commonly used in science and environmental applications. So what is actually available for tasking? My office works closely with the National Reconnaissance Office through their Commercial Systems Program Office, known as CSPO, as well as NGA's Source Office to stay current on the commercial and national systems available to support civil operations. This coordination ensures we understand what sensors are available, how they can be tasked, and where the data will be delivered, so we can best match user requirements to the right capability. In the next few slides, I'll briefly walk you through the primary electrical, optical, and sim data capture radar capabilities, a reference guide we provide to users, and how we handle needs that extend beyond the current systems. Through NLO's electrical, optical, commercial layer contract, NCAC has access to the commercial satellite imagery from Planet, Black Sky, and Vantor. In addition to electrical, optical imagery, NCAC also supports synthetic aperture radar collections, which is especially valuable for monitoring areas impacted by cloud cover, smoke, or darkness. Through NLO's commercial radar contract, we have access to SI, and under NGO's Northern View contract, we have access to RadarSat. These radar systems are commonly used for applications such as flood mapping, ground deformation analysis, persistent monitoring where optical imagery may be limited. To help users navigate these options, my office provides a Commercial Systems availability reference guide. This guide summarizes the key information such as available sensors, tasking parameters, data delivery platforms, getting users a practical starting point when developing a collection request. It's important to note that this reference is not all-encompassing. Contracts, capabilities, and availability do change throughout the year. Because of that, my office routinely updates the guide to reflect changes and ensures users have the most current information available. Finally, if you have a remote sensing requirement that you cannot be satisfied with the current available systems, or requires capabilities beyond what exists today, I encourage you to reach out to us directly. When contacting us, please include 3 things: a clear description of the requirement, the minimum parameters needed to satisfy it, and a brief explanation of how that requirement impacts your mission. This information allows us to track longer-term needs through the Civil Applications Requirements Working Group and helps inform future investment and capability developments. Even when a requirement can't be met immediately, it plays an important role in shaping the next generation of solar remote sensing capabilities. I've talked through the systems, the contracts, and process. To bring this together, I want to close with a few real-world examples that share how federal agencies are actively using these capabilities for science and hazard missions today. Each example highlights a different sensor type and use case, but all demonstrate how tasking commercial imagery through NCAC translates to actionable insight. The first example comes from the National Park Service, which used Vantor imagery to assess flood damage following a heavy rainfall in Yellowstone National Park. On the left, you see the pre-event, and then on the right, you see the post-event collection where the flood and debris flows rush out a section of the road. The next example comes from the U.S. Geological Survey. Scientists using synthetic aperture radar to monitor walrus habitats and haul-out sites in Alaska. I chose this example because it highlights the unique value of synthetic aperture radar for science applications. SAR can collect imagery regardless of cloud cover or daylight, which is especially important in the polar regions. In this case, SAR data enabled consistent monitoring of the habitat use and population behavior over time, providing insight that would be difficult or impossible to maintain through optical imagery alone. The final example comes from the U.S. Forest Service using Vantor imagery to monitor sun and pine beetle activity across large forested areas. Historically, these assessments relied on aerial surveys conducted on it twice a year. By leveraging commercial satellite imagery, the service was able to collect data multiple times throughout the season, giving them a much clearer picture of where infestation was emerging, how they were spreading, and when intervention was required. This shift enabled more timely decision-making and improved management of forest health at scale. I'll close by coming back to this audience and the strong alignment between NCACs and NASA's CSDA program. Our goal is not to duplicate efforts, but to complement one another, ensuring federal civil agencies have seamless access to the full spectrum of commercial remote sensing capabilities. Whether a requirement is best suited for CSDA, NCAC tasking, or future capabilities development, for offices work together to ensure requirements are routed, coordinated, and executed and tracked efficiently. If you take one thing away from today, it's this: no civil requirement stands alone. Through coordination, shared visibility, and collaboration, we are maximizing the value of commercial remote sensing in support of science, other response, and public service missions. Thank you for your time today, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thanks so much, Ross. And with that, we're going to hop directly into the Q&A. Okay, so it was one of the application oil spill response. And then just as a reminder to everybody, if you could place the questions in the Q&A panel, that would be great because other participants cannot see any questions that are posted in the chat, only hosts and panelists. All right, so your question, Ross, is one of the applications oil spill response.
Yes, we have done and continue to do oil spill responses. NOAA, EPA are a couple of examples. If you're talking about ocean-based oil spills, yes, we've synthetic capture radar is really good at capturing oil sits on the surface, as well as, but I'm not aware of much on the, I would guess, terrestrial-based collections. So I don't have an example for that, but I know for ocean-based spills, it is being leveraged.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Ross. Appreciate your response here. All right, so I am doing another scan, and all right, could Ross please discuss how he sees the imagery offerings evolving in the future?
That's a great one. Really like that question. With the advancement of commercial remote sensing, resolution is only going to increase, it seems like. I would say the temporal aspect of collections will continue to increase as well. I see that in the near future, more commercial satellites are being launched and tested and evaluated. And so I just see a rapid growth. The past 10 years, we've seen a rapid growth, and I haven't seen it stopping or slowing down. So I think the future is bright for remote sensing, and the sensors are only getting better.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ross. All right, doing another scan here just to see. I'll check back in the chat. All right. Transitioning back to the Q&A. I don't see any additional questions. So with that, if there are no further questions, I'd like to thank our speaker this afternoon, Ross Rogers, and also thank our CSDA program speaker, Dana Ostrenga, my backup host, Joseph Smith, for your contributions, and Joe for your help this afternoon. And there's actually another question. My apologies. Has there been any mention of the newer Legion constellation being available?
Yes, actually, earlier this week, when I was speaking with the NGA commercial office, Legion is definitely the requirement is there. We get it pinged multiple times from our user base to see if it is available. I know you can see it within GG Pro, and some of that imagery was available after one of the hurricanes earlier this year. More to follow on that, but it's getting very rural to being available through the NCAC. I believe CSDA may have some avenues for that imagery, and so if a requirement, if we can't suffice it, we'll definitely push it over to CSDA to see if they can require that image. That makes sense.
All right. Thanks so much for your response, Ross. Appreciate that. All right. Taking another look. And did you want to add something?
Yeah, I just want to say that CSDA does have Legion data on contract. And so if there is a need, please feel free to reach out to us and we will see how we can accommodate.
Okay, that's great. Thanks so much, Dana. All right. Taking another look. Let me take another look back in the chat. Okay. Can the speaker please repeat the point regarding requesting publicly available imagery using CIDR? I missed what they said.
That question? Sorry.
No problem. So I'll read it again. So the question is, let me scroll back down in the chat here. Can the speaker repeat the point regarding requesting publicly available imagery using CIDR?
So the public available imagery through CIDR, that would be through Earth Explorer, and usually that's previously collected. Earth Explorer has a host of this is already available on that. One of them being the landslide data, as well as declassified satellite imagery or ALO imagery that is available as well. CIDR is the tasking mechanism if you're requesting for new data, so a new collection, and with that, that would be leveraging the authorities through the Civil Applications Committee for us to submit that tasking. So The SATA is just a tasking mechanism for us to get the requirement in and satisfy it.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks so much, Ross. All right, let me do another quick look. I'm not seeing any additional questions in the chat. With that, again, thanks to our speakers and to everybody, to all of you, most importantly for your participation this afternoon. We really appreciate it. Thanks for the feedback. So thanks so much, everybody. With that, what we'll do is we'll leave the virtual meeting space opened for another 10 minutes or so, and we will log off from the audio component. So if you think of a question for either Dana or Ross, please do feel free to type that into the chat or the Q&A. And with that, thanks so much, everybody. And we're going to log off from the audio component and leave the virtual meeting space open. All right, everybody, have a wonderful rest of your morning, afternoon, or evening. Take care now. Goodbye.